Hey, what's going on? What's good, everyone? Welcome, of course, to an episode, to a live stream of Opinionated with yours truly. I am Reggie, also known as Resla throughout the streets. And I'm hoping to have a really good conversation with you guys today. Shout out, of course, to everybody who's already in the chat. I've been looking at CCD. My notifications already going off. Let's do that. Let's take that out so that we're not being interrupted, right? Shout out to CCD who was already in the chat. Shout out to also Cellulite who was also in the chat as well. So thank you for showing up early, for being the early participants. And last episode when I was doing a live, because I get so jumbled up with all the things that I do. The last episode when I was doing a live, I was talking about, look at this, look at this, look at this. The lovely. Just when I shouted out, she showed up just in time, the lovely Yvette Marie. So my last episode, I was talking about my talk when it came to immigrants that were here pretty much coming through in New York. But there was a deeper conversation that I wanted to have. I kind of want to get a lot of the New York things out of my way because they've been on my mind for, I'm not gonna lie, quite some time. And as much as I am a New York resident, I have a big gripe with my city. I do. I honestly do. So hopefully that you will be able to hear some of the things that it's really going through on in my particular mental, but also within my heart, how I feel about the city as someone who's been grown and raised, come over here, left, come back, left again, came back once again, and how exactly are some of the things that have been going forth as someone who has to see so many changes that are taken through from the city, especially as someone who is a native. Not many people can actually claim to be a native New Yorker, as in literally, I have a birth certificate that says that I have been birthed in the hospital in the Bronx. And a lot of people can't really say that who I run across in these streets today. So let's cover a lot of that stuff that's going on. And so this episode, if you haven't noticed it already, is really about NYC's homelessness. But keep in mind, while I am making it very specific to homelessness that's here in NYC, this is a big thing that's happening in a lot of different states, happening across our nation. So even though I'm talking specifically about my particular hometown, these are things that are also taking place in other people's hometown. And maybe I might cover those things, or maybe I might talk to someone who has more extensive knowledge as being a native from those towns. We'll see. So let's get to it. So my first one, and really coming down and speaking about the headline of how things are pretty much going, is talking about the homelessness when it comes to New York City. Now, for those you already know from looking at my last video, I of course will, as always, I say the same thing to you guys. Get your favorite drink, make sure that you're comfortable, make sure you kick your feet up if that's something you want to do, but also get whatever drink that you feel comfortable about having. To me, this one is going to be Red Stripe. I'm not really enjoying it as much as I thought I would. I think it's the particular local distributor that's nearby me. When I'm somewhere else, it tastes phenomenal. When it's nearby me, it doesn't taste as great. I don't know why, but I don't really get that taste that I'm really nostalgic about. But it is what it is. And I want to get into the problem that's really been on my mind for a long time when it comes to homelessness, because we have a big, large crisis when it comes to homelessness here in New York City. And the reason why, and because of that, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And I'm going to cover a lot of reasons why it doesn't make sense, but I'm also going to want your opinion on it as well, because maybe it's just me. Maybe you've experienced a little different. Maybe you're thinking about something that I haven't particularly thinking about as an outsider from New York that might be able to give to my mind. But so let's get into this. So first and foremost, let's just go over the headlines. And I have some things that I'm going to try to share with you guys. I'm not going to read verbatim everything. I've got my notes here on the side of things I don't want to cover. Ugh. I'm not sure of actual websites that I want to pull up just yet. So let's just do this and pull up our own goddamn websites, right? Why the hell not? So we'll look at this website right here, which is pretty much talking about homelessness, pretty much for the. Oh, I guess I should work on actually building that up. But it's basically homelessness that we have here taking place in New York. Now, this article was written in 2023, in September of 2023. But I'll give you the pretty much the gist of it since I read through it probably a few times. And what it's basically stating is that we have a very large homelessness situation that's happening here in New York. I see it all the time as I travel through to and from the city. I kind of hate doing that as well. Yo, LA, thanks for coming through. Thanks for coming through. Yeah, yeah, we giving our wrenches since people out here talking a lot of ish, you know. I had to learn the back end of how to do that. You know, some of y'all, y'all been at this for a little while, so I had to turn around and figure this out. And absolutely, look at that. Thank you very much, sir. Hit that goddamn like button. Absolutely. I can use all the support as possible. Because I do this thing for all you guys as well as myself. So let's just get into that first part of it. And that's pretty much talking about how New York has been dealing with a big thing when it came to homelessness. Well, before we came to getting into this whole thing about immigration, I'm not going to give you an immigration episode. That was your episode for last time when I was doing the street, right? So for this particular one, I want to bring up the headlines. And basically, we're going to be shedding a little bit of light on the reality of New York City's homelessness because a lot of people don't really figure it out. And I'm going to break down some numbers to you that you tell me how you think. But when you hear the number, tell me if it really makes sense for the amount of people that we have here that we are supposed to be having to sustain a large population as we do. All right. So to put it straightforward, the number of the number of people that are here in New York is really staggering when it comes to people who are just unsheltered completely from New York. They have an estimation of people who are unsheltered around, well, really, it's over 4,000. It's over 4,000 of just living unsheltered people here in New York. And keep in mind, that's just unsheltered. We're not even talking about the people who are in shelter systems, which is over 100,000 people. I think the last time I checked, it was like over 116,000 people who are in the actual shelter systems. Some of these people do not work. Some of these people are working people who strictly just do not have a place to live. And we're gonna break a lot of that down as well. Coming into the future. Uncle Tom, yo, yep. Thank you for showing up, man. Of course, as always. Thank you for showing up. Um, so we have so many people. We have over 100,000 people that's basically circulating through the shelter system. And keep in mind, the shelter system, I can tell you from personal experience, is not the greatest system to be in. You're sharing that system with a lot of individuals. You're sharing it with old vets. You're sharing it with the mentally impaired. You're sharing it with alcoholics. You're sharing it with thieves. You're sharing it from basically low level offenders all the way to supermax offenders. There's no delineation. You get thrown in whatever large room you get thrown into. I mean, a lot of these places that you will find as a shelter are like old armories. So there's a whole lot of space to house a whole lot of people that come from a lot of different backgrounds and you never know what they're there for unless you get to hear their story. So just want to let you know that. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is over 100,000 people that we have. Uh, Last my numbers checked, it was like we were just over 116,000 people who are homeless, just homeless and in the shelter, the shelter system. We have at least over 4,000 people who are homeless who are not in the shelter system. So these are people who are between the shelter system and also people who within temporary housing. And to be honest with you, temporary housing is kind of like the shelter system. If you are not able to uphold a certain amount of threshold for a certain amount of time, then you will not be able to keep your housing, right? We're not even talking about Section 8 yet. You didn't get Section 8. We're talking about just temporary housing. Um, you haven't even fully been approved because getting Section 8 is just so difficult, so far few in between. So behind the numbers, we're talking about people who are essentially struggling to have housing, struggling, who are basically being resilient, and they're just trying to survive. Now, I want you to keep in mind with everything else we got going on, right? We are talking about the majority of people. So the majority of people, the majority of the homeless population is basically staying in the shelter system, which means that I know you're going to hear these numbers, right? And you're going to find it staggering because I've been in a couple of these shelters. I've been in all of them, God, thank goodness. But I've been in a few of them. But 53% of the increased number of residents just in the past year have been migrants, just in the past year. And most of them have, of course, been seeking asylum. That's just the way we have it here in the US because, or not in the US, but just here in New York City, uh, what used to be our Big Apple, which is far from its glory days. But primarily, a lot of those people who are migrants are actually people who are seeking asylum. So they claim whatever the hell asylum seeking is. So let's take a look at this one here, right? Shush you. So here is basically talking about the people that we have here pretty much doing asylum seeking and the people who are pretty much talking about it, talking about the shelter system and such. Now, I read through this article. A lot of it is pretty much just rambling about different people and how people feel about it. But essentially, from my notes, from what I wrote down, and I'll just read to you what my notes were, is basically saying that from since October, since October of last year, 77% of the people who are coming in are asylum seekers, and the population is mainly made up of people who are of families. So we're not even talking about adults, just single adults. We're talking about people who are actually families. So I'm talking about man, wife, and child. 77% of people who are seeking asylum come from foreign nations. Just letting you know that right now. Imagine how many, and they said the average population of the people coming in, we're talking about from two parents and at least two children. It could be three, but it's talking about two children. So you're talking about four, a family of four is mainly making their charges in here. Of that 77%, only the average family size tends to be 3.5 people. That's exactly what I was just telling you. And 4% are related adults, which means they just came in a group. That's just pretty much what it is. They're not related at all. They just came in a goddamn group, who of course are seeking asylum. So that's roughly 1 in 5 people. 1 in 5 are seeking asylum as single adults, which really went up to 19% of single adults. And of that 19% of single adults, we also have 3.6% of people who came in who claim to be together as a family but have no children. Just think about that. 77% of people who came in have families. It's mainly 3.5 people. Then we have people who come in singularly. That's 19% by themselves. And then we have 3.6 of people who come in to claim to be family, whether brother or sister are married, who have no children. And yet we give so many accommodations to them, right? And I'm not here to give my opinion really about the authority of what the laws are and what we can give to migrants or whatever the case may be. That was my last video. If you didn't check that, check my last video. But these are very unprecedented times that we're going through right now, and we really need to figure out what exactly is going on and how exactly can we taper these things down. Resources are thin. We already have people who are already homeless, who are not able to really get places they need to be. And because of my own situation and how I've had to deal with homelessness in the past, I'm very big on people who are homeless. So the idea that people can come in and they can, and the government actually, which is pretty much revitalize a dying hotel that was pretty much in bankruptcy to house a whole bunch of people who never was supposed to be here in the first place. And they're already benefiting off of resources and opportunities that weren't even provided for those who were native and even American born. It's very disheartening to me. It truly is. And there needs to be something strong about it. I wish I can give you the age range for it, but because since they're counting man, woman, and children, the age ranges are all over the place. I would have to do a little bit more research and try to figure out to try to narrow down what the average range of people who are coming in who are not citizens of the city, but never mind the country. So I'll have to do a little bit more research on that one. My That's my particular thing for that. So we're already having people that came in who don't naturally belong here. Yet we have people who already been here in the system trying to find places of work and they're not able to. Keep in mind that the majority of people who are actually homeless in the shelter system are not single adults. They're actually families. We're talking about people who do not have a roof over their heads, but they are working adults, mothers, fathers, children's working adults, and yet they don't have a roof over their heads, which is a big thing that happens here in this state. And I've been scratching my head for the longest about it, but we're gonna deep dive. We're gonna get into that one. So that was just my first segment and pretty much bringing up the highlight when it comes to that, right? So the second part was pretty much how I look at things in terms of a debate. Now, if NYC is on a large scale, right? When it comes to the lack of housing, I mean, we're gonna have to take a little bit of a short trip to figure out why NYC has such a big problem when it comes to housing, and and why the reason that we have a lot of people that are on the streets the way that they are. Let me just take this away real quick. Huh? Because they came, there's no place to stay. Well, they're giving them places to stay. So the thing about, I mean, man, I'm pretty sure you know this. But the thing about New York is that they say that if you come here under the idea of seeking asylum, New York City has to provide you with a place to stay, has to provide you with means to survive. They have to. But there's not really a limit on that. They don't say how many people can they take in. It's unlimited. That's the issue that I also take when it comes to our state. Right. I am in total agreement with that, Mayo. They do give more benefits than what's needed, but the idea is that they, to be honest with you, we never really ran into this big of a problem before, right? It was always a big problem, but it never ran into this large of a problem as it is now. And then on top of that, there was always a big issue when it came to homeless people, and I'll get to that. So when I start dropping numbers, I want you to keep this on the back burner, right? Because I talked about immigrants and how I felt about that in my last episode. But I want you to think about the episode. I want you to think about this episode, and when I start dropping numbers about just American New Yorkers here in this city, and then based on what I've already said about immigrants before, add those numbers to it at the end, and you will find just how much of a problem this actually is. So, affordable housing has always been the biggest thing. If you ask anyone here in New York, what is the major issue that they always have? It's not food, even though food's pretty high. It's not entertainment. Entertainment's freaking expensive. It has always been affordable housing. It's not even a third of your check. Most people who are here in New York City, half, if not more than half of their paycheck goes to just strictly paying rent. But then we have so many people who are on the streets, people who are homeless, and the majority of them deal with mental illness, deal with substance abuse, or they're dealing with economic hardships, or there's just really a shortage on where a person can actually live. So due to the change, and this is one of the major problems why we have so much problem when it comes to affordable housing. Affordable housing. It's because of our rent control laws. We just think, as people who are here, when I talk to people, that they just believe that landlords are greedy. Thank goodness my landlord is not. But we, the common theme in people's heads is that landlords are greedy and they want as much as they can. There are some. I can't speak for most, just for those that I've spoken to, which is very little. So there probably are some, but because of the rent control laws, I have come to understand that landlords have to put a particular threshold on renting, and it's well above the actual average uh, income of Americans that are here in New York City, and it's become a really big hindrance for us. So think about it this way: we have people who are coming into I keep trying to say the United States, but into New York City. The average on the low side of people who make an income is actually around 43,000. The average. New York City has put a renters thing where it's basically from 30 to 40 times your rent. They're really leaning towards 40 times your rent. And that's estimated to go up to 60 times your rent. Don't quote me on that. I just know what the rumors are. And then on top of that, right, the high end of that minimum threshold, we're talking about the low income, the high end of that minimum threshold is somewhere in the 50s. With combined incomes of two people who are actually working and combining their resources, the average of their income is around 83,000. 83,000, two people together in New York City. And that's just to pay rent. We didn't talk about the other bills. Just paying rent, what they would need to have as a threshold just to be able to survive here in New York. Here's another thing the thing that bothers me that a lot of people don't even understand. We see all these skyscrapers, we see all the older buildings, we see these houses that just won't move. We see the four floor places. New York City has lost over 250,000 affordable renting apartments over the past few decades. Think about that. We have the space. We have so many people who are homeless. We have the space. I just finished telling you that we have over 100,000 people who are homeless. We have 4,000 people who are estimated to not even be in a shelter. And we have over 250,000 affordable apartments that are lost to New York City. And their reasons are for and their reasons for the reason why they cannot bring out these places, why they cannot bring in these places for families, because most of the people who are actually homeless are working families. But we have this controlling of inflation that we need to get a hold of, which is getting out of hand. The medium rents have increased in the last 8 years by basically 12%. So I want you to think about this. In the last 8 years, affordable rent has come up has by 12%. And in that time where rent has come up by 12%, the income rate of people being here in the city has only go up by 2%. Do that math in your head. Home affordability, renting affordability for housing has gone up 12% in the last 8 years. But the income for people has only gone up 2%. How are people supposed to be able to make it? It's difficult for people who not only on the low income scale, but also for the medium income scale. Because you'd be surprised how many people who are actually homeless who are on the medium scale. We just assume that a lot of people who are in the situation are people who are just basically people who can't pay their rent or they're just screwing up. because they are in Section 8 housing, which, just to be honest with you, a lot of people do not get vouchers. And they're in the shelter system. There are more families who are in the shelter system than people who are single. And it's a big, big problem. It really is. New York City has basically estimated that of the basically the 250,000 apartments that they lost over the last few decades, they're basically saying that they can't even reinvest into those old buildings, into those old apartments, give the landlords money as a city, as a government. They can't even give that because their excuse is it's due to restrictive zoning and building codes. That's their excuse, folks. They are unable to take care of these places, which would actually house a lot of people. But we have so many people that are in the shelter system, working adults, working families that are unable to have a roof over their head. And think about it. You have mother, you have the father, you have children. The children have to either be in school or they have to stay with a family member or whoever the hell they can trust, while both parents live to work and be in the shelter system. I'm not even saying that they have a temporary spot. So now you have to worry about having a roof over your head, and you have to worry about the safety of your children, if not your spouse. Make it make sense. Make that make sense. It's a ridiculous predicament to have to go through. And yet we look through it on a regular basis. It makes no sense. I was looking at an article, and actually, I'll pull up the article right now. Give me a moment right here. Let me pull up this article real quick so that you'll see it. I was looking at the New York Times, but they want me to subscribe to that damn mailing list. And I was like, F that. I'm not doing that. So I went to JP Morgan. And of JP Morgan, you can actually see it here. So this article is, of course, written on October 13th. And of course, you have some people that's within the our city officials that are trying to going back on some things and try to help us out. But it's never going to be enough because we're not going to be able to capture a lot of the things that are taking place here in the city itself. So for here, let me move this over so I can be able to read that properly with you guys and still see you guys in the chat. I wish, honestly, I wish that would be the case, but it doesn't seem like they care. Because let me tell you about this one, CCD. We're New York is actually claiming to be behind on developing housing, developing buildings. And because they're so behind in developing buildings, and because so many businesses are not even able to stay here in New York because they can't afford their own rental spaces, there are actually some places that are thinking about leasing out actual business storefronts for housing. Think about that. And they can't even do that because that means they would have to repurpose areas. You're gonna live somewhere that has all glass fronts? Absolutely not. But these are things that we now have to consider. These are things that we're gonna have to consider because, quite frankly, just to be able to renovate a place to put people in proper housing where they can actually have all the things that they need to have within a commercial property that, quite frankly, was never set up that way, would take extra things, extra resources that, quite frankly, landlords are not even in a position to do so because there's a certain rent threshold that they have to meet. Because why? We have freaking laws that are being put on the books that say that there needs to be a certain threshold for the rent. The biggest problem that everybody says about being here in New York is rent stability. Everything else comes afterwards because people need to eat, whatever the case may be. But people should not have to figure out whether they should keep the lights on or they keep a roof over their head and eat. So that's where we're at when it comes to that. In this particular article, you can pretty much see that it's already talking about pretty much of the housing that 79% housing is burdened. Think about that. Most people, they're saying 79% is spending at least a third of their income. I can be honest with you. I think the number is a lot higher than that. I don't think it's 79%. I think it's almost close to 50% of people are paying a good portion of their income just being able to keep the lights on. I don't know anyone who's basically only paying a third of what they make on rent. I don't, especially because when you can see, let me just say it this way. My girl and I were just having a conversation about this. There are literally Manhattan apartments, 2 bedrooms. Do you want to? Let's do a guess. Of the Manhattan apartments that we have right now, 2 bedroom, how much do you think they're paying for rent? How much do you think they're paying for rent? Give me some numbers. How much do you think they're paying for rent? Not 10K a month. I won't say that. Damn for sure it won't be 10K a year. How much do we think that they're paying? Okay, we got 6. Okay, we got another 6. You're awfully close. You're awfully close. The average was being looked at for a 2 bedroom apartment, basically a freaking bird cage. Oh, Mayo. Not even close. Not even close. Was actually 5.6K a month. $5,600 a month for a 2 bedroom apartment in Midtown. On the lower end, it's close to around 3. In the outer boroughs, it's around 3 and just below. I can tell you that living in the place that I'm living at, I'm paying $17.50 for rent. Yes. For those who need to know that, I just said it again. 1750. And that was me properly negotiating. Let that sink in for a moment. How many people can say that they don't even pay that on their mortgage? I'll wait. And what's your alternative? What is your alternative? You pay it or you go homeless. You pay it or you go homeless. I'll cover that later. But that's really your options. You pay it or you go homeless. You figure out what you're doing right now because most people in New York are going paycheck to paycheck. They're paycheck to paycheck. They're making 6 figures in their paycheck to paycheck. Imagine that. I know a young woman. She knows who she is if she's watching me. He makes around 1,000, between 1,013 to 1,020 a year. She's living paycheck to paycheck. Check this out, folks. Check this out. And she's got a roommate. She has a roommate. Now I'll just chalk it up and say part of it is her expenses. She's living a little too high on the hog, if you ask me. But she's paycheck to paycheck and she's got a roommate. She's not even a full place to herself. I'm just gonna put that out there. So we're gonna cover that, Mayo, because as much as I hear people say that, you'd be surprised how difficult that is. It's not an easy thing to just say. It's just leave. Just fucking leave. Go where? Because you need to be able to pay for wherever you're going. You need to find something that's available for you to be paid for. You need to be able to have a stable income to be able to find once you get there. Nobody is just dropping everything the fuck that they have to go somewhere and have no prospects and have no plan for themselves. That's not what? Rational. It's not rational to say that. It's easy to say just fucking leave. To go where and to do what? We already know that across the nation, opportunities for jobs are slim pickings. People are surviving just to try to keep their jobs. The idea that we can just say that we can just drop everything at a drop of a dime to go move, never mind get swindled out of wherever the hell you're going to be moving from or moving to pick up what exactly? What's out there waiting? That's a fool's errand. So people are out there waiting for the opportunity. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, since Uncle Tom is in here. What was the excuse that I gave you as to why I haven't left this damn city? There has not been an opportunity that has presented itself for me to freaking leave. I'm not opposed to leaving. I'm not stuck to New York. I've left New York before. But there's no other real opportunities outside of New York that will want my skills because they already have places. They have the people that they need to have, and those people are not trying to leave because it's slim pickings out here. You said I'm crazy? I'm not. Do you think that people can just go out and just find whatever they want to find? It's not. They want people who have skills. And again, people are posting jobs. People are not hiring. Under law, you have to post a job. That doesn't mean you have to fill the requirement. I can tell you that as someone who's have to sit there and deal with these damn people. So imagine you're posting consistently, trying to get your resume out there. You're willing to leave. You're willing to move your family out. But all you keep getting is the rejection letter. In fact, people don't even have to freaking call you on the phone to tell you why you've been rejected. You just get a rinky-dink little freaking email. I'm sorry, it's not as easy as you claim as just saying, we'll fucking leave. It's not that simple. There are plenty of people who are willing to leave. There's no opportunities out there for them to leave, and therefore they have to make the most of what they have. And that's where we get a lot of New Yorkers who are stuck, because there are New Yorkers that want to leave, who are homeless, by the way. But how do you go about trying to find a place while you're trying to find a place because you're homeless with a family and you're looking for a job that's willing to take you when there's not really a lot of jobs that are available and you're already homeless? Never mind the people who actually have a job, who have a home, who are looking for places to freaking live, but there's no opportunities out there, and they're looking at their freaking paycheck diminish and they're looking at their accounts diminish because they're also worried about their landlords raising the rent on them. Should I go on? Tell me how there's a rational statement there that just says, just leave. Because I've also heard the entire, well, if you just leave, the city will just get better. Will it? Will it? And especially when I hear this, well, I don't want, because I keep in mind, sir, where's the other jigaboo? Sir, I don't want you guys leaving the city because y'all moved out to my area. Y'all fuck everything up. Isn't that what y'all say? So you don't want us to show up because we're trying to make a better lives for ourselves, right? Us city slickers, us city bound folk. But then you get people like Mayo who just say, fucking leave. So we're not really wanted wherever we gonna go because we're trying to figure out a way to survive. But at the same time, we can't really leave either because we're trying to keep a roof over our head while we're trying to figure out how we're gonna balance the books. That's not a trick question, sir. I was raised in the hood. I can be if I want to. And a lot of people do live in the ghetto and they make over six figures. They live in the hood and they make over six figures. Just saying. Nah, sir. Mayo said leave. I'm going by your neck of the woods. Absolutely. I'm gonna be walking barefoot to your property. Morning, sir. Hi. How you doing? Can I borrow some brown sugar? Why not? I can't afford to stay where I'm at. It's the only place I can get sugar, right? In y'all's state, in y'all's neck of the woods. I got no choice. But y'all don't want me there, though. Sir, how can we, and where are we gonna go in the DR? We gonna sleep on the fucking beaches? How? Because the only way I can go to the DR is if somehow I'm a hot commodity and I would still have to leave my woman, by the way, to sling dick on OnlyFans. That's the only way I'm gonna be making a paycheck if I went out to the freaking DR, sir. I would have to label my whole profile as being a bad bitch. I have to be a bad bitch. Resla profile, bad bitch. In DR. Laying down the D in DR. It's the only way. See, now we get a little bit sus, LA, because you say you got a pension. I ain't got no pension. And if you're paying for my lifestyle, I'm a bad bitch to you. That sounds a little sus. It's a little sus. I won't do that to the both of us. I won't. Then I gotta feel like you're my pimp because I gotta go slay out there these bitches to get paid to then turn around to give you the money because I'm really living off of your pension. It's a little weird. It's a little weird. I'm not even gonna lie to you. It's a little weird. Hey, that guy, you was dicking me down, but then I give you some money because you said you need something. You need, and then I see you give it to this guy. You give it to this guy with the thin black hairline. What's that about? Well, I gotta be like, Rosalinda, he's my pimp. I just, yeah, he took my passport and everything. He's holding on to it. So, I give you this work in order to make sure that I can feed myself. I don't even like gorditas like that, but I gotta do what I gotta do. You know, is that the kind of strain you want to put me under, sir? I don't want to be a part of slavery. I don't want it. I don't want it. That's not my thing. Oh, is that what's gonna happen? After we basically have to run out everybody else who already got their own cigar bars. That's the only way that's gonna happen. Oh, I'm not getting excited. I'm not. I don't even want. Listen, we've seen a couple of the videos. I don't even know. I don't want to know how much dime that LA is dropping. I think he had like 3 girls in a car that he was in. I probably can't get a girl who's an amputee. You talking about he got 3 girls in his car? God damn. I've never had a pension, sir. 401s and Roths only. I've never had a pension. So I ain't got on that. Just saying. Just saying. You got it good. You got it good. But I'm sorry, I can't be your hoe. You can't be pimping me out to these girls in the DR. I'm not gonna let you get a hold of my passport. It's just not gonna happen. Love you dearly, but I'm not doing that. It's not gonna be a thing. It's not gonna be a thing. Oh, hell no. No. That's literally giving a whole new definition to Uber Eats. Me eating in the back seat. No, absolutely not. Not happening. Not happening. Sir, the moment you said the word Michigan, I automatically thought it was a small town. I didn't think anything very spectacular. I didn't think about anything spectacular at all. Not even a little bit. I'm just gonna let you know that right now. Not saying I want to shit on you, but that's immediately when you said Michigan, I just thought small town. Just saying. Yeah, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. No. there'd have to be a very, very strict contract. I can't have that happen, sir. Now, when we have all these people who are turning around and doing all this nonsense, right? Since we have so much available housing that won't be reinvested in, right? It really calls into question as to what we should be doing with ourselves going forward as people who are natural native New Yorkers. Because I already said before, I'm supposed to like to come in here and have your little tea, and you only been here for a couple of years. You still haven't developed a New York accent. Not New Yorkers. You're not. And this is something that makes me even a little bit more aggravated. And I think I'll switch over to this little thing right now. Because the majority of the time of the people that I notice who are homeless, folks, who do you think they look like? Who do they look like? Hmm? Who do you think the majority of homeless people that I see? And trust me, yeah, it's not because I'm trying to buy a car so that just my peripheral vision is that's just the only thing I see. I'm in a lot of these damn boroughs. Who do you think I see majority of the time? Who do you think are the people that I see in freaking going through all these mental health facilities, running around with a goddamn a trash bag on and all this other stuff? Is that right? Is that right? Oh, let's go ahead and take a look. So, according to just the research that I've done when it comes to the demographics between Americans, it says that African Americans, whatever the fuck you want to call that, African Americans are significantly overrepresented in the homeless population in the US, period. Period. Even though they are 13% of the general population, according to the accounts that they've been looking, they represent over 40% of homeless population. 40%. And I said, that's kind of crazy. Let me go ahead and just do a little bit more deep dive in that. It says African Americans actually account for about 52%. And I said, that's a little wild. You know what? Let me know. That's a little going overboard. Let me just take a look at how it looks here in New York. African Americans in New York City make up 24% of the population here in New York City. But for all accounts, they are represented in the homeless population by 50%. They only make up 24% in New York, and yet 50% of them are a part of the homeless population. Want to get a little bit deeper than that? From a study as far back I could look back from 2019, it says 59% of single adults in New York are homeless were Black, compared to other counterparts of 27% being Hispanic and 10% being white. 10% of homeless people were white as the counting of 2019, but 59% were Black. I'm not even trying to make this a blackity black show. I just thought the numbers were very interesting. 27% are Hispanic. In New York City alone. What is a person here in New York to do when we hear that? Cut the whole African American part out. When we hear that so many people, the majority of people who are homeless are people who are actually homeless and have families. Then from that sect, you also have people who are homeless, who have families, who are working. They are working. They have over 250,000 available, affordable apartments. Some of them are condemned buildings. Some of them are places that they're just not renting out because people cannot afford the rent because the average people are making how much? On the low income scale, 43,000. On the mid income scale, around 56, I believe, thousand it is. 50 to 56,000. And because they have families, they're not allowed to get it. The average combined between two people joining together, putting their asses together, is around 83K. People are struggling. I just mentioned it earlier too. If you're someone who's here in Manhattan, God forbid, I will have no dreams of being in Manhattan, by the way, but it would cost you $5,600 a month on average for a two-bedroom apartment. If you want to go down to a two-bedroom apartment just down into Manhattan, it would cost you somewhere for between just over 2K, like 2.3 to 3K. I don't have an establishment that big, but I'm very organized, by the way. But I will say my number again. I pay $1,750 a month. Never in my mind that I thought I would have to pay that, but what's the alternative besides leave New York to be homeless in another state? Because I'll be honest with you, I don't really have family nowhere else. I have very limited family, especially no one who's just going to take me up just because I'm blood. We can't trust people like that. So where would I be going if not trying to make it for myself? But what do you guys think? What do you guys think about the people who are here and they're trapped, pretty much trying to make ends meet, trying to figure out the best resolution for not only themselves but also their families? They're in a perpetual cycle of literally what I told you, the rent hiking by 12% in the last 8 years, but wages have only increased in terms of income only by 2%. What do you guys think of that? Is that math mathing? Is the math mathing? Hey, mama, what's going on? Taco service? Be lucky if you can actually park a taco truck anywhere in the city. No, no, they weren't white druggies. Not even close. The majority of people I see on the train, the majority of people I see sleeping on platforms, the majority of people I see walking around with trash bags on, the majority of people I see digging out of garbage cans, the majority of people I see getting into fights, even the dude who got choked out, even the dude that recently got shot in the fucking head. Like black people. The majority of the people who are sick and homeless and mentally are black people that I run across. And without me having to look specifically, numbers got kicked out right in my fucking face. It just said, "Oh, Resla, oh, you looking up New York? Yeah, take these numbers too. It's your people. Hold that." I felt like it was a Diddy party. Take that, take that, take that. A Diddy party. You want these stats? Take that, take that, take that. That's how it felt. And I'm just like, God damn. I already knew it was in my head, but I figured it was just my point of view as someone who's been homeless, that I'm just seeing more homeless black guys because I've been a homeless black guy. But no, the numbers are out there screaming. And when I think about it, if I don't go to Chinatown, I probably never have seen a homeless person who was Asian. Even when I was in the shelter system, I don't ever recall seeing an Asian person who was homeless. I've seen Asian security guards. I saw Asian administrators, but I did not see an Asian homeless person. I would have to be in a shelter in Chinatown, good luck, in order for me to say that I have seen a Asian homeless person. I just want you guys to think about that. Typically, for a one bedroom, let me just put it this way. For a studio apartment in a decent area of Brooklyn would cost you around 1,300. Let me say that again for you, mama. For a bird cage, for you to touch four walls and walk into a one room where you can pee and shower. I'm not even going to say that you're guaranteed to have a bathtub. Just shower can cost you 1,300. For a one bedroom, can range you from 16 to almost 2 grand, depending on where you want to live. I've even seen 2,200 for a one bedroom. All about where you want to live. Do you want to be out in the sticks? Do you want to be out in the decent area? Do you want to be in the West Indian area? Do you want to be in the predominantly Spanish area? Do you want to be in the party area? Do you want to be in the gentrified area? It's gonna cost you depending on where you want to be. What's your comfort level? What you're looking for in terms of nightlife? Because there are plenty of neighborhoods. They don't all have a good nightlife. Some nightlives are just party it up all the time. You get stuck up, you get freaking drunk, and they'll call you an Uber. You may have even been there enough time where they know your address, they'll immediately put you in the car. And in other places, you go drink, you get stuck up. And that's the end of it. You get stuck up. You're getting robbed. You may, if you're lucky, get out of your car with underwears on. I'm just letting you know. If you're lucky, folks, you go out, you get really drunk. This is before Uber, and you wake up in the house of a midget. Just saying. But I would never take that risk again because it was way too risky. That's my young and dumb moment. It's not easy for anyone. And keep in mind, I'm focusing on New York because New York is my state. But this is something that's happening in California. It's probably worse in California, to be honest with you, because we don't have large tent cities. They're popping up, especially on the FDR. They're popping up, but they're not nearly as large as Skid Row. We don't have zombies like Kensington. Things could always change. We don't have it yet. And it's always a possibility because NYPD, currently with the laws on the books, is hands off. My girl and I were having a conversation about after my last life when I was talking about immigration. We both are old enough to remember a time that if you were homeless on the street, keep in mind the shelter system wasn't as grand as it used to be. When I say grand, I really mean that it wasn't as many shelter systems. There definitely wasn't as many shelter systems for men, and men were predominantly the ones who were homeless. You mainly had family shelters, which weren't really family shelters. It means that the wife or the girlfriend and the kid could stay there, but the husband needed to figure his shit out. So you would have a woman and a child in a shelter, but the man couldn't be there. I've literally ran into women who have said that they've left to go find a family member or to pay somebody out their pocket to be in a room, and they couldn't even have their boyfriend or husband there because they were worried about being in the shelter, sleeping on a cot, and worrying about being raped. And their man was nowhere around because he had to figure out where he was going to sleep for the night. Not making that up, by the way. When I was homeless, I was in uh, 3 shelters. I bounced from 3 shelters. I don't remember the name of one of them, but it was a religious shelter. And the only reason why I bounced to it is because they allowed you to stay inside during the daytime if you were willing to be in the church to, find God. Um, Originally the shelter system I was at was at a place called Bellevue. It's a pretty known hospital. Um, but the first shelter I was at was Bellevue Hospital, which for those who may know what Bellevue Hospital is, they're also very well known for having their insane asylum. I'm gonna let that rest for a moment. They're known for having a very popular insane asylum, in addition to shelters, in addition to a hospital. So after that, I wound up in another shelter, which turned out to be my permanent shelter, which was going to be in Brooklyn. And from there, I pretty much stayed in Brooklyn for a long time. But there are plenty of people who are having families who are being split up because, quite frankly, they are not allowed to be a unit. There are lots of people who are not allowed to take care of their families. And these are our parents who are working because they're not able to work. They will find themselves on the fast track to being on the streets or not being taken care of. Because when you're in the shelter system, in order for you to even be considered to having a roof over your head, to be able to be considered, to get help, to find vouching, which is already strenuous as it is to get a Section 8 voucher, you need to be working. And that means that you are under your own protection. Trust me, even the security guards that are there at a shelter will not help you. And DHS only pops up when shit pops up. I can literally tell you guys, I have been in at least two times, two times when a raid has popped off in a shelter. And when I say raid, I don't mean raid like FBI, kicking the door or whatever. When I say raid, I mean like the inmates. I'll say it like that because it's the closest thing. If you want a good idea of what it's like to be in a penitentiary or just your early induction of what it's like to be in a penitentiary, be in the shelter system. When I say raids, I mean like rooms of guys fighting in the hallways, stomping dudes out in cots, everything. I have literally survived two raids of people literally fighting everywhere while security guards getting punched in the mouth and kicked and everything, and they can't do shit. And they just gotta wait for the guys to show up with the black gloves to put hands on people. Because security guards are not able to. But DHS, they can get hands on. That's a riot. Okay, yeah, it's a riot. It's not a raid. Well, when DHS comes in, it's a raid. But you're right, it's a riot. I've been through two riots, and at least one of them has definitely turned into a raid. Where they literally kicked in rooms, was throwing people down to the ground, had shields. Like there were a lot of people. There was NYPD officers. It was ridiculous. But you're absolutely right, Neil. It was a raid, but one of them definitely turned into a riot. Um, where I was like, yeah, being told to basically I need to leave. I need to leave. We don't tell you guys to leave for the night, but you gonna have to find out where you can sleep. You can lay your head because you can't come back here. It's just way too wild. Um, the only other time I dealt with a riot is um when I was a supervisor of security guards and a riot happened. And I remember they woke me up out of my bed. They were like, yo, you know, Simmons got punched in the mouth. And I'm like, what? He got punched in the mouth? What the fuck was he doing? Oh, it was a raid. He was a raid. Yeah, well, no, be honest, believe it or not, it had nothing to do with being ghetto. It didn't really have anything to do with being ghetto at all. It was about being homophobic. It would be the straight, masculine, all about it guys having big fights because something would transpire between somebody who wasn't so masculine. But they damn for sure wasn't a woman. And something might happen and it would just turn out to be a raid or rather a riot, I should say, on the floor. And I remember one time I came in and I had ruined my ankle at this point, and I came in and it was just ridiculous. everybody was fighting. I remember I just took my bag and everything, and I just literally got into a corner, and I was just like, the one that comes near me is the one that just gets everything I can, because gets everything I can to beat the shot at him, because there's no way I can look to see who's gonna be the next person. It was flooded. There was security on the floor, and I could not tell you who security was because people were all over the place. And I shared a room with people who were low level thieves to people who were in Supermax. The guy who literally was in the cot next to me was in Triple Max. Was there for something serious. One of the coolest guys I ever met. Practically all his teeth missing. Had the body of a 30-year-old. Man was in his 50s. Most of his teeth missing. One of the coolest men I ever met. Just saying. Yeah. But you'll discover that's a little introduction to what prison will be like. It is some zoo type shit. So just be aware of that. So I want to move a little bit off of the homelessness thing, but it's kind of a little bit on the homelessness thing as well. And that's basically me talking about something that's another problem. New York, what the fuck is wrong with you? First, I got to deal with the mass immigration that's happening. I have to already be contending with the idea that we're already losing our housing, despite the fact that we have so much space, but we can't touch it, right? And even the buildings that are being bought outside of the big condos that are really set up to be like friends apartments, by the way, if you ever tried, anybody who feels like it right now, anyone who's here, do yourself a favor. Go to Google, go search for an NY apartment, try your damnedest to find a 1-bedroom apartment for you, just you by yourself, and see if you don't get a whole bunch of a room in an apartment. It is hard for you to find a place by yourself because we do not promote places to live by yourself anymore. And I blame one show for that. Anybody want to guess what show that is? Come on, we all know what the fucking show is. I blame the asses for it. They can't. Some people are taking advantage of it, but some of them, you're right. They would like to just have someone who can pay, but they can't. Absolutely. I don't hate a lot of things, but I hate that show with a passion because it made single people believe that the best life for them was to be amongst other people living in a fucking apartment. That grown adults should be living the friends lifestyle. I literally saw a bus ad come by that I saw grown adults, people that were ranging from at least 23 to 28, looking like fucking frat kids on a bus billboard coming by. And I was like, y'all too old to be looking like that. Selling the idea, it was like one of these, I can't remember if it was like Street Easy or whatever, but selling the idea that go look for your next roommate. Most people don't want a roommate. As someone who's had roommates, the last roommates I had, I made so uncomfortable. I did. I had 2 female roommates. I made them uncomfortable at first. Listen, and some people might be doing that for their kids, whatever, because it's to the point where we have so many colleges here in New York, but we don't have a lot of big campuses. So you have to get to a really predominant college. Like, for instance, the big college that we have here in the city, we have Cornell. Cornell has a campus. Here in Manhattan, I was at Manhattan because I'm not in Manhattan, but in Manhattan, you have Cornell. That's a big one. You have NYU. You have Hunter College. You have there's another one. There's another one. But those are the major college. Let's be honest, only one of them has a real campus. The other ones are just buildings that you can walk into. You have to walk city blocks. You walk by all kind of people, and then the places that you go as dormitories are just rented out big buildings, rented out condos or whatever else apartments that you basically live in. It's not on a campus grounds. You're not walking campus grounds, walking across the field. You can see the football field or whatever to get to where you got to get to. It's not like that. Those are other places like Lehman College, like York College, like Stanford, like those are those places. Like, it's not right. Columbia, right? Well, let me step into Columbia. Yep, you're right. Columbia does have a bit of a campus. You're absolutely right about. I had to think about that real quick. I was thinking about Harlem. Yeah, you're right. Columbia does have a bit of a campus. Yeah, I dated a chick from Columbia. There is a bit of a campus over there, so you're right about that one. Cornell's is upstate. You're right. Columbia is what I was thinking about. So yeah, these are some places that actually have campuses. Most places actually do not. They're just a bunch of buildings, and you go into different areas of buildings to be able to get your studies. Um, NYU, which is a big one, is predominantly just buildings. There really is no campus. And we go through all this thing to turn around and figure out what we're going to be doing with ourselves in terms of not only how we look for our future, but also how we're going to be doing things for our future for these young people. And I turn around and look at everything we have to go through. Like I said, because there's people who literally will apply for school and student aid to do what? To not be homeless. People are racking up student debt who have lived in New York as single people to get dormitories. And like I said, dormitories are like regular houses. You just live in the friend's lifestyle. People are doing that. They're getting part-time jobs or whatever. You said satellite campuses. I guess you can say that. Yeah, it's not on the campus ground. It's not a big. It's not like a HS, BCU or whatever. It's like you literally you're assigned people. You live in a freaking building. It might be a condo. It might be 6 rooms. It might be a 6-bedroom apartment, and you're all just having your own room, basically, in that apartment. That's basically what it can be like. Because a lot of New York apartments do that, and now we gotta navigate all those different ways of living. Like I said, you have people who literally work at part-time jobs, but they go to school hoping to build something for themselves, and at the same time, they are taking up student loans just to be able to live. This is where we get the whole forever in college kind of thing. Yeah. A lot of housing is off campus, but you actually end up paying more for being in state than off campus here in New York. You pay more for being a resident than you are being foreign. Make that shit make sense. But it is what it is. So in here, I was talking about for this particular piece of the argument, I was thinking about the New York State Assemblyman, basically Edward Gibbs. And basically, this is the thing that really pissed me off when it comes to New York. It's in the works, it's gonna be coming up. I can already hear Tom pretty much saying that this is gonna be another thing that makes New York fucking trash. But there are talks in the works about they're introducing legislation for 25 million for providing funds to ex-inmates to receive in monthly installments of 6 months on being released from prison. So that means that if you do time, you leave prison, you go in your halfway house or wherever the hell you're going to be at, you're going to be basically be given a monthly installment of $2,550 a month for 6 months because they're using this as the idea of reducing recidivism rate. There are people who are struggling. So instead, before, when you used to get released as a prisoner, you used to get something like $40 in a Metro card. You know, you had to do your check-ins. You had to figure out life. You figure your shit out. You had to find a job, despite the fact how difficult would it be, all that stuff. But now they're putting into the work that people who are leaving prison are going to receive $2,550 over the course of 6 months. 6 months. How is this fair to people who are already struggling here in New York City? Because you were pretty much getting you did the crime, you were getting free room and board, you were giving clothing, you had great insurance compared to a lot of things that us on the outside are doing. And then when you get to leave, you're being paid to be on your own. And then they turn around and say it's intended to improve the chances of a successful re-injury? Seriously? Seriously. Check this shit out. I was reading an article, but it led me to this video. So let's take a look at this video here.
Pay inmates almost $2,600 in tax money once they get out of prison.
And as you can imagine, the proposed legislation is getting a lot of feedback. Fox 5's Morgan McKay talked to those.
I wonder what feedback it's getting from struggling families who can't pay their rent. Because if prisoners are going to get $2,600 checks, shouldn't they?
Tuesday, cops found a torso and arms in a Bronx apartment. Today, police arrested the man who lives there.
I'm innocent.
You see, this man, police say he's been arrested not once, twice, but again and again, at least 47 times.
This man was arrested how many times? 47 times. And at the same time, this man was also working. Like, it wasn't like he was just stuck doing crime. He was actually working, guys. People were paying him to actually do crimes for them. But he had a regular job, all this stuff. Like, I was good, I'm reformed, and doing all this craziness. But at the same time, what the hell? Can be, but will it be? Will it be? Is a year enough? Because here's the thing. I would rather them go to prison and stay in prison, mama, rather than they're being paid as an incentive to go to prison. They're being paid as an incentive to go to prison. If they turn around and get out of prison, take the money over the 6-month period, and they turn around and go back to prison to do another 6-month period, and they're going to get paid again, by the way. What good is that? I am one person. I can't vote anyone in. It's a collective decision. I think you already know that. It's not me. It's the majority. It's not a me thing. If it was a me thing, I would just say offer the heads. You've been doing enough time of going in and out, offer your head. Or at least offer your hands. Figure it out. Do drumming on the corner with your nubs. Like, you can't shoot a gun when you ain't got no freaking hands. Can't steal when you don't got no hands. What kind of crimes are you really gonna be doing when you don't got no hands? Now, you could probably learn to try to cock a gun together and everything with your foot. But the chance of you doing a lot of armed robberies or sticking people up or whatever is at a minimum. So sorry. Sorry. I have a much harsher punishment when it comes to people who are repeat offenders. I wouldn't even give them an option. You can drug them in their sleep. You can drug them during mealtime in jail. You can hit them with a tranquilizer dart, whatever. And when they wake up, nubs, basically. And they got to figure everything else out the rest of life. Maybe you don't want to pay for freaking executions, but you can pay to have hands removed. Just saying. And I make it to the point where I say hands removed, not fingers. I don't even want to give you the opportunity to be able to jerk off. Even if you can't get a good, strong grip. I don't even want to give you the opportunity, just straight nubs. If you're going to be a repeat offender, why should I care? You never learned your lesson. 40-something times? 40. And we not thinking about clipping his wings. I'm just saying. What's a purple city? Oh, I'm guessing you're talking about a mixture of red and blue. So you just want to be eating Gerber? Is that what I'm just hearing? You just want to be eating baby food? If you want to be RoboCop, you just want to eat baby food. That's just what it is. Listen, you can't jerk off in the subway with no hands, or you got to try with two nubs. I don't know how successful that's going to be with two nubs trying to get that off in time. But I speak to MTA workers who turn around and tell me that there are definitely people who jerk off. But with two nubs, it'll be a little difficult. So I'm all for it. If you do the time, you lose the digits, you lose the hand. So it is what it is. That's just the way I look at it. Yes, absolutely. You definitely just want baby food. Ew, baby food is good. Absolutely not. I hate the smell of it or anything. Ugh. String peas and whatever. Ugh. Ugh. Just ugh. 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 That just sounds terrible. Anyway. Ugh. Now I got the smell in my nose already.
But right now, there are no limitations on how or where the $2,600 can be spent. This all started when a student walking to school found a left arm. On Monday night, investigators raided the apartment where the defendants were living.
It feels like the devil just crawled through here.
It just helps them give a little breathing room, allow them to focus on their job search, reacclimating to the community.
What does that mean? That means there's more victims in New York City about to happen.
Why the hell am I getting ads? What the? There we
New
go.
bill making the rounds in Albany that would
Single day for each person that it's taken care of. That's over $11,000 per month per person. Everything's paid for. Food, shelter, you name it. But for some reason, it's not enough to stop some people, again, a very small number of people, from joining a gang or attacking police officers in broad daylight.
Can we just talk about that? Thank you for mentioning that. Can we just talk about that shit for a moment? The idea that we even went from a part where we went from a point where we didn't even have MTA workers on the books as saying that if you attack them, it's the same as a felony as you attacking a cop. To the point where we turned around and say that if you attack a bus driver, if you attack a train conductor, it's the same felony as you attacking a cop. And these mofos out here don't give a shit. Whether they're the ones that's from jail, whether these homeless people that just have the mental illness, they're not getting taken up. Not at all. Not even a little bit. Really? Yeah, it's a small number, but how frequent is it happening? That's my thing. It's happening consistently. Consistently, this thing continues to happen. It's ridiculous right now. It's ridiculous.
Oh, I almost forgot. We've got the debit card program, $13 a day per person. And if all these programs aren't enough to convince people not to continue their lives of crime, it reveals something very frightening, which nobody's talking about, regarding New York City's progressive approach to crime. And while these programs are being debated, we're in the middle of a housing crisis. You've got people living in dilapidated apartments that cost thousands of dollars a month, and $2,600 checks could really help them out. And many of these people have obeyed the law.
I didn't even go through this whole video yet. He's already saying the shit that I was already taking a look at. Actually, my chick is actually the one that sent me this link. She's like, you gotta check this guy out. And I was just like, okay, cool. It just says the prison thing I'm looking at. Let me go take a look at it. And he's already mentioning the housing shit. God damn. This is perfect right now.
Their entire lives. They've never been to jail. They've never even been arrested. And that's why this program isn't going to seem fair to everyone.
By the way, that jail that they were just showing with the little that jail is right in the heart of the freaking city. It's like right in the financial, like right near the financial district, like right by the courthouses. It's crazy.
This here is called the Tombs. It's a local jail, and they're doing some sort of renovation. If only the city were using these 4 excavators to build affordable housing. And by renovation project, I mean total teardown. They're getting rid of this facility. But what better place to talk about the fairness of a program that's going to pay people for being incarcerated? Because in order to understand why some lawmakers think it's a good idea to pay prisoners $2,600 checks, we've got to put ourselves in the shoes of those people to think about what they go through once they're released from a detention facility. And we've also got to remember that there are some people who have been very successful after prison, totally reforming and transforming their lives. And unfortunately, as
sir, there are no projects that are taken down. I've never, ever heard of a project building ever being taken down. That's way too much space. It's way too much use of NYCHA? Get rid of a building? Not at all. Not at all. Whether it's the older ones that are literally been held for people who are under low-income housing, or the old ones that have to like terrace on it or anything, but the older white people be living in it. No one's getting rid of any of these spaces, sir. Not at all. It would take too long just for them to replace the damn building. I've seen buildings that they're literally are dragging their ass to try to rebuild, and it takes them freaking 3 to 5 years to build that goddamn building. No. There are so many buildings that are sitting up there if they have not gotten rid of them. No, sir. There are so many buildings that people tell me that they've been up there since before I was born. I'm telling you, they're still up there. Whether you want to talk about Parkchester, whether you want to talk about out in the freaking in Brooklyn, whether you want to talk about out in the freaking city areas of Major Deegan's, like there are so many projects that sit up. Most project buildings are not down. To take care of an entire building, case in point, where are they gonna put them people at? Where are those displaced people are gonna go at? Who will pay for them to go where? Until they get a whole new building resurrected. Where are they going? They don't do it. It would cost too much money to house these people somewhere else, and then build these damn buildings up and then move those people back into it. They don't do it. They don't do it. That's why they try to buy people out of where they are, but then once they buy them out to go be somewhere else, they lose their freaking Section 8 vouchers. They lose their Section 8. This is why people do not leave those actual projects, because they don't want to lose their Section 8. They don't want to lose their rent stability. So these places do not get taken down. They don't. Who's going to risk that? Especially when they are basically passing down that Section 8 housing to the people that's there next to them, to a niece, to a nephew, to the sons and daughters. They're not doing that. They're not doing it. So no, they're not breaking down a whole bunch of areas and for freaking Section 8 houses, especially project buildings, especially the big ass project building. It's not happening. It's not.
we'll soon see people who went to prison, came out, were very successful, and then did something to go right back for some reason. But the assemblyman who has proposed this legislation is a former convict himself. Even though some people think all politicians are criminals, Edward Gibbs is a success story. He's 55, and as a teen, he did time for a manslaughter charge. And whether you agree with this program or
I should what? Why on earth would I do that? You think I'm going to mess around with these crazy ass people on the subways? I see them every time I get on the subway. Sprawl the fuck out on the floor, pissing and shitting all over themselves, jumping on the freaking track, screaming bloody murder. And you think I'm going to do what? Look. You should show people. Do you think the moment I even show my freaking phone or my camera, or God forbid, my freaking GoPro, that they're not going to be thinking of a way of how many freaking drinks that they can get? And I got a lot of Asians and Hispanics in my area. Literally, it's like split in half. You go this way, you got a whole bunch of Asians. You go that way, you got a whole bunch of Hispanics. And they all got something in common. They drink too much. They are absolutely insane. They are on drugs. They are screaming to high heaven. They are smacking themselves in the face. I could do it, but I probably have to Sparta kick one of them onto the tracks. I'm not gonna lie. I don't want to go to jail just to get some coverage. I got a better chance of doing something above ground than to actually be in the train station themselves, especially because they act up even crazier at nighttime. It's absolutely insane. So, you asking for a lot. I don't think I have the insurance for the gear, sir.
or not. It's being proposed by somebody who's been on the inside and is now on the outside and thinks it could do some good. And for some people, it probably will, but will it be 100% foolproof? Before we answer that, understand this plan will be very expensive, and it's going to cost $25 million to give these checks out to 11,000 prisoners, which is controversial because those 11,000 prisoners are supposed to be released this year. So this would have to be something that happens every year, which is probably unaffordable for New York at this point. Plus, I mean, again, families have to pay their rent every month. Plus, New York's governor has vetoed measures like this in the past because of how expensive they would be for the state to afford. But critics say we've got to do something because right now, when you walk out of a prison, you get $40 in a Metro card, and that's not enough to help people. That was the same amount of money that they were giving people 50 years ago when it was worth a lot more. And the governor has countered with a proposal of her own to up that amount to $200. But advocates of this program think an amount like that's not enough. And the reason for that has to do—
Who are these advocates? I guarantee you they're not natural New Yorkers born and raised here. Who are these people? Who are these people? I don't think that people who've only been here for less than a decade should be out here talking about what they think is best for New York. You should be castrated. How dare you? Don't even talk to me about what you think should be best for New York if you never even had a chopped cheese in your life. Just gonna say that again. If you can't even tell me what a chopped cheese is without having to Google it, we're not doing this. I'm serious about my chopped cheese, by the way. If I got Arabs that are coming out here and they giving a bomb chopped cheese and you say you've been here for 5 years and you tell me that you never been to Harlem, you never been past 96th Street? Well, you want to give criminals money for doing the most absurdity of things? Go fuck you on the island that you came from.
Do with things that I never considered. For example, 40% of released prisoners end up in shelters, which means people are ending up on the streets, making them a continued burden to society. But critics would point out that being in the shelter system doesn't—
Exactly. Oh, you cut someone's head off and you shit down their neck? Let's give you $26 for it. Absolutely. Why not. And then you can do it again in another 6 months.
Doesn't necessarily make somebody a criminal. After all, there are right now 65,000 asylum seekers in the city shelters, and most of them are not going to commit any crimes. And what about the idea that someone's past decisions have consequences for the rest of their life? For example, if you do something awful and you get sent to prison, yes, that's part of your punishment, but you've also lost the ability to work for 20 or 30 years. You haven't built a career. You're going to have trouble because of your actions, and that's something you're going to have to live with for the rest of your life. There are people who think that poverty is an acceptable consequence of bad past behavior. And critics also say there's no proof this money's going to stop people from reoffending. And as you're about to see, repeat offenders are a huge problem advocates of programs like this don't want to talk about.
How is that wrong? It's not wrong to assume that. If people didn't need money beforehand to turn around, you say he's selling this program? Like, I think he's just selling it the way it is. I don't think he's really selling the program. He might be. I don't know. I don't think he's selling the program. But I think he's selling it the way it is because, quite frankly, it does sound like you have these people who are sitting there talking about, oh, they need a second chance. But we have people who, when they weren't getting those incentives, they were still repeat offenders. Now, I will say this as someone who knows people who are repeat offenders. One of the reasons that they do repeat offend is because they're not given an opportunity to be able to get a regular job. Now, I'm not going to say that the majority of them wish to get a regular job. I'm going to keep it a buck. I'm not going to tell you to turn around that once they came out of freaking jail, all of a sudden they saw the lights. And all of a sudden that they wanted to freaking start doing the up and up. I'm not going to tell you that's the thing. A lot of them still was on the corner. A lot of them still selling weed, selling coke, still like they were doing all that stuff. So I'm not going to tell you that in particular, but I will tell you that there were plenty of them that wished to go and do something for themselves, and they were unable to get the opportunity to do so. For instance, they weren't able to go to jail. No, definitely able to go to jail. I don't even know how I just said that. They can always go back to jail. In fact, that's what they did. They were unable to really get a job as regularly as someone who could get a job back in those days. We're not talking about this time. We're talking about back in those days. So we're talking about like the 90s, 2000s. They weren't really able to do so because they had a felony on their record, and it made getting a job very much harder, which means that they slipped into areas that they were already more comfortable with in doing crimes because they weren't able to get the opportunity. Combine that with the idea that people who were felons were also not able to get education anymore. They took getting a degree out of fucking college. They're getting a degree out of prison. So not only did they sit on their ass for who knows how many years, but they weren't even able to educate themselves so that they could be more productive members of society once they got out. It's one thing. It's no different from basically you are in a coma. Let's just say that you didn't go to jail, but you were in a coma for 10 years. If you got out the fucking coma, you're almost as useless as the guy who was in jail for 10 years because both of you have no fucking skills. I'm just going to be honest with you. Outside of having a felony on your record, you both have chosen to have, not chosen, but you both have no fucking skills. You're going to be looked at the same way. We don't really want to hire you because you're looked at as a liability because you don't really have any skills. As a person who's a felon, well, you're a felon. And because you also didn't have anything to do for 10 years or so, you also don't have any skills. When we took away programs for people to be able to learn, there was a problem. Now, the only difference between the felon and the person who's in a coma is that the person who's in a coma can go to college to get skills. The person who's a felon was not able to go to college to get anything because they're a felon. So I can see why there is also that recidivism rate of them ending up back in prison because they have a low amount of opportunities to be able to get a job because they have a felony, but then also the fact that they're not even able to go get higher educational status to be able to push themselves forward to being a productive member of society, which is why they turn around and do the dumb shit they do to go back to jail. I get it. I understand. I don't think we should give them money for it. I think we should probably open up programs for them to be able to go back to school. Or I don't know how the government wants to finagle that, because it's gonna be way over my head to give me a headache. But somehow make it okay for particular industries to be able to hire people who are felons. That's the only way I could look at it. I wouldn't say put a fucking felon who's known for stealing in retail. Like, I wouldn't say, like, shit like that. I wouldn't say put him in the banking industry or whatever, but there has to be some medium so that people who are coming out of jail could be able to be productive members, rather than just say, you a felon, you can't get shit, and yet you need to be productive in society, because we know what they're gonna do. That's how we got to the point that we're at right now. But that's for people who are above my pay grade. Let's continue.
He is the man alleged of committing a particularly heinous and evil crime. 48-year-old Sheldon Johnson, accused of killing a man. Orlando Medina says a tenant called him around 1 a.m.
Someone was fleeing for their life. She says she heard 2 gunshots.
But Johnson says they have the wrong man. I'm innocent. The victim, 44-year-old.
So this is a very sad story. There's a lot to it, and it flies in the face of the idea that some people can be bought off from a life of crime, because the person involved was a criminal justice reform advocate who had achieved a certain level of fame and notoriety and had initially looked like somebody that had turned their life around. These are security images taken from the victim's apartment showing the alleged culprit moving in and out of the unit. Here he is wearing a blonde wig. He had several disguises as he came in and out multiple times. And he's one of the people who would qualify for a $2,600 check in this new program.
It feels like the devil just
Folks, he was quote unquote reformed. And now the motherfucker out there wearing a fucking like Dolly Parton wig to commit crimes. Why? Oh, you said this was on Joe Rogan? Oh, I have to look at Joe Rogan. I didn't even know that. Why? Like, you were clean, sir. You were in the clear. Why? And then you had notoriety. You made yourself practically famous for changing your shit, and then you did this dumbass shit. Lord Jesus, have mercy. Mary and Joseph cannot save him. Just Jesus only.
Roll through here. Johnson is an ex-con who today works as a criminal justice reform advocate. Seen here in a Facebook picture he posted with Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg. He served about 25 years behind bars for attempted murder and has a long rap sheet filled with other violent crimes.
So it's important to understand that Sheldon Johnson was in prison for 25 years, and he'd previously been arrested for narcotics and robbery charges. But in addition to being a criminal justice reform advocate, some of the things he was advocating for would have actually meant that he would have been released sooner. And now that we can see what has transpired in his life, some people think the things he was advocating for might not be such a good idea. And what's so sad about this is we want to believe everyone deserves a second chance. And we want to believe that the prison system, however awful it may be, does not mean that someone's life is over and ruined forever because they went there. But the serious nature of the accusations against Johnson make us wonder if somebody with a violent past can be trusted if they haven't truly repented for what they've done.
I had a wife, I had family.
Hold on, I can't hear you, Resla. Hold on.
Sorry, that was me. I was double muted. So this man who has done all this shit, made himself very prominent, is going to turn around, and you said be on Joe Rogan, and
he was on Joe Rogan as a guest, sir.
Jesus Christ! I'm guessing that's what this particular shot at him is right here, and the idea that he would still be able to say the dumb ish that he has to be able to say is ridiculous to me.
Well, let's admit, all right, we have enough data on recidivism and the psychological profile to probably guess a person's success or failure outside of prison, after prison, probably to about 97%.
Yeah, you can say that. I still
So
don't
why
see the
bother?
but I don't see the reason why we're making the dumbass case to say that these people should get freaking money.
No, they shouldn't. But it's a guy just like him who is now in New York City Council who introduced this program.
Yeah. It's driving me nuts.
You're literally letting the inmates run the asylum.
And I am literally convinced that these people are not native New Yorkers.
But he is, sir. He was a native New Yorker, sir.
He is. Not the people who are giving him grace. It's not them.
Oh, yeah, but it's the native New Yorkers who voted him into his position.
I wonder, because as far as I know, when I meet a lot of mofos here in New York, like, I be arguing with them, like, why the fuck are you not voting? A lot of them are not into local politics. It be people that be outside who be living here for years that turn around and get into our local politics. It drives me insane. It really does.
Either way, it's people in New York voting for him.
These guys, I swear.
I mean, I hate to say it, but
still my son.
You say what?
It's self. I mean, it's masochism, sir. It's self-imposed.
There's got to be a better way to fix it. I know.
I keep hearing Eric Adams say, well, it's the law. I have to do this, right?
Yes.
Why don't you hear Eric Adams say, hey, New Yorkers, let's change the law?
He has said that.
So we don't have to do this. I have never heard him say it once.
Well, I've never heard him say that we don't have to do this because, quite frankly, if it's on the books or something that they have to do, they turn around and do it. And he's got to fight with that fucking dumbass governor, too.
It's not a New York State law that New York City has to do this. It's a New York City law.
I wonder why didn't he act like he's so tired when it comes to the governor?
Because he's lying. See, and also you were talking about, people putting felonies on their. In New York, you can no longer ask that question on a job application.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, recently we took that away.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right about that.
They're literally letting the insane run the asylum in New York. They're letting. I mean, this guy's shaking hands with Alvin Bragg.
That's a fact. And I'm like, I don't get it.
He put 60% of the felonies in Manhattan down to misdemeanors last year.
Listen, you heard what I said. Take they fucking hands. Take their hands.
I'm for you.
Growing up, I was hearing stories about my so-called notoriety, and
Johnson went on to talk about turning his life around.
Got my GED. I left the gangs alone, which was a benefit for them because, I was what you call an authoritarian. I was a rule guy.
So what's fascinating about this is that he did this long podcast. Now, there are some people who've watched that interview in hindsight and have concluded that this individual wasn't really sorry for what they'd done. Maybe they were sorry for it, but they hadn't in their mind fully decided that they were walking away from that life. These are the conclusions of others. And people are now saying there's a difference between somebody who's repented for what they've done and someone who's been punished for something but really has no intent on changing. And what that means is not all the people who go to prison are going to reoffend. It does mean that $2,600 payment would really help some of the people who truly reform. But as alarming as the story of Sheldon Johnson Jr. is, the sad reality is that this sort of thing isn't really that uncommon, as you're about to see. This right here is the Metropolitan Correctional Center. El Chapo, Jeffrey Epstein, Bernie Madoff. And although the worst of the worst get sent to prison like this, we've got other people who are also a terrible menace to society who the city can't figure out how to put behind bars.
They don't. They keep letting them the fuck go so they can turn around and do the most dumbest shit. This is how we get the people with the double digits, because they will not put them behind bars, and it drives me insane. Insane. From the people who have places to live, from the people who are constantly robbing, people who constantly stick up people, the people who were involved in freaking shootouts, the people who are freaking homeless, who are freaking mentally insane, who keep going after people. Like, I don't understand. You have a consistent record. Why are you not being put away? Why are you not seeing some consistent time? It drives me crazy.
It's called prison and crime and criminal reform, sir.
I swear. It's so easy to pick up somebody who's a dope boy in a corner, but you can't pick up somebody who's literally been walking around punching white women in the face?
They're not putting the dope boys in jail either anymore.
No, I guess not.
They're literally not putting anybody in jail anymore. Unless they do something so egregious. I mean, they spent more time putting that bodega owner. He spent more time in jail.
That's a fact.
Than this cat.
Yeah.
For defending himself.
And they keep running it. All right, let's see what we can say here.
You see this man? Police say he's been arrested not once, twice, but again and again, at least 47 times for preying on New Yorkers on the streets and inside the city's transit system.
Okay, this is bear reform of the bear reform.
All right, now I realize that this place is closed, it's being renovated, but what type of system do we have where somebody who offends 47 times isn't put somewhere to keep society safe? Worst of all, the actions of this particular person took place on the subway, at least a good number of them. And here we have a rare instance where the police arrested the right man and the district attorney brought the right charges, but a progressive judge thought locking this person up was the wrong move. And now all we can do is hope that the 48th time this person gets arrested, that they finally end up in a place like this where they can't hurt anybody else.
And so far this year, police arrested Faulkner 6 times, 4 of those for serious crimes. The chief says he is just one example of how repeat offenders slip through a revolving door and add to subway crime.
Everyone does their job. The process works. And when the process works, ultimately, the city is a much safer place, and that's what we're striving for.
Okay, not hating on the police, but I'm not really sure what process the chief is talking about that works when it works, because this guy's been arrested 6 times so far this year, twice a month for the first 3 months, and 4 of those arrests were for very serious crimes. But the chief rightly points out that the bigger problem here is New York doesn't punish repeat offenders, and it's almost like criminals here have a get-out-of-jail-free card.
In this case,
that was the point that we're making. They do not see any freaking consequences for the shit that they do. And they're allowed to just freaking skate.
Yeah. And what the chief said was, when the system works, it works.
It works. Exactly.
But the system isn't working because of DAs and judges.
It's Jesus Christ. And these judges, like, who are appointed, especially by de Blasio, like, they're just so soft. They're so fucking soft. It's really bothers the hell out of me.
This is social justice, sir.
When I just turn around and I'm just like, for me to turn around and just be like, I almost missed the days of Giuliani.
Almost, sir.
It's just like, Jesus Christ. Like, I won't say Giuliani was perfect, but jeez, like, I will take that over what we're seeing right now.
Giuliani at least cared about New Yorkers.
He did, even though he was on some bullshit when things were getting rather rowdy when it came to cops, but he was definitely for New Yorkers. When the re-election time came up, he was on some bullshit, I'm not gonna lie. But outside of that, once he was elected, I gotta say, he wasn't that bad to me. He was not that bad.
Because you're not a criminal.
fact. That's a fact. All right, let's see if we can finish some of this up.
The Manhattan District Attorney asked for bail to be set at $10,000 cash, but the judge in the case let Faulkner go free.
New Yorkers are tired of this. Okay, bail reform is set.
So what's crazy here is New York has a very progressive, controversial district attorney who, in this instance, asked the judge for bail, which is surprising to some people. And the judge said, no, I'm just going to let this person go. They don't need bail. I trust them. And this has critics saying that progressive laws are enough of an issue, but when the judges are even more progressive, things can turn into a mess. The other problem is that judges are forbidden from considering someone's past history when they decide on bail, which essentially means even though this person's been arrested 47 times, each time they appear before a judge, it's like they're a first offender. And since judges can't look at somebody and decide that, hey, this person's a danger to the public, I should set bail, because they're no longer allowed to consider dangerousness, people walk free. Now, I get it. We don't want to live in a place that locks up the innocent, but we also don't want a justice system that victimizes the innocent by letting the guilty go every time they get caught. But when a person can commit 47 separate crimes and they're still walking around out there waiting to strike again, something's wrong.
38 people committed assaults on transit workers. Out of those 38 people, they committed 1,126 crimes in our city.
That's a lot of repeat offenses, and it's especially crazy when you consider that we're just talking about offenses against transit employees. Those are felonies, punishable by up to 7 years in jail. And these 38 people have over 1,000 arrests between them. But the problem is statistics like this have different meanings depending on who's asked to interpret them. For example, a tough on crime critic would say, see, this is proof that people aren't learning lessons and we need to punish them and lock them up. But a bail reform advocate would say, you know what, 38 people, that's not that many. And even though this looks awful, the overall benefit to society is better. They would say that society would be worse off had we come down hard on these people. But how could those 38 people commit so many offenses if they had been locked up? And is it possible that New York City's no consequences environment is what's leading to all of these offenses in the first place?
Absolutely. Not even a question.
And guess what? All the benefits are drawing the homeless like flies to shit.
Oh my goodness. Like it's not even a question or somebody even has to ask that.
If I show up on a bus to New York, I'm getting a check.
That's exactly what's been happening. That's been happening for a while now.
Yes.
And now we're just seeing the biggest spike in it when it comes to the migrants that are coming in.
And because Biden invited them in.
Jesus Christ.
I mean, it's not because Texas has been shipping them there. They were headed there anyway because of the benefits.
Mayo, my thing right now is that I've heard enough right now. My thing right now is that I'm having a problem with the fact that we have so many people that's here in the city. Now, I speak to some people from time to time, and a lot of them don't feel this way. But at the same time, as New Yorkers, a lot of us don't really advocate for the things that we should be doing. Like, we're not doing enough on our part. I don't even know if it's like if we have a defeatist mindset because we've been screwed over by so many different people who have their own interests, whether you want to call it de Blasio, whether you want to go back to Bloomberg, it's just so like you want to go back to all the way to fucking David Dinkins, like if you want to. Like people just over time have just gotten so outside of politics, and for some reason they believe that the general thing will take care of the local thing. And I'm like, you need to stop that. I mean, I thought about that as me being a voter when I realized that a motherfucker was able to buy his way into an extra term. And I'm talking about Bloomberg. I'm just like, Jesus Christ, like what are we doing here? What are we doing? And as New Yorkers, we're not doing enough of our part. We're so okay
and not
with
enough
just letting it
vote
happen.
in municipal elections.
I agree.
I mean that's your start because that's your first line defense.
I don't think enough people are as much as we talk about people who go to school, whatever it be, enough people are not smart enough. They don't know enough about the political landscape of New York.
They do, but what New Yorkers suffer from is Stockholm syndrome, sir.
Can you explain that to me?
This has gone on so long, right? and you have a pretty even uptick, it becomes normal. This is just normal.
How long
To
would you
where
say
if somebody in the 80s or 90s moved out of New York in the 90s and went back today, it would be a completely different city.
Oh,
Somebody who stayed there the whole time would say nothing's changed.
Fair enough.
Because they don't even recognize the dysfunction. Because it happens on a sliding scale, on a constantly growing scale.
I think about things that happen here in New York, and I'm always thinking, okay, so if it's this bad in New York, and I don't even think it's like that, and this is just my bias compared to what I read on different headline papers, because again, I'm not in their cities. I'm always thinking, as bad as it is in New York, it doesn't sound nearly as bad as it is in Chicago, and it doesn't sound nearly as bad as it is in LA. But I'm always trying to read their shit to make sure that it is. I try to do a really, I try not to be biased about it and try to really figure out what's going on. And then when I just think about all the shit they've been going through, Chicago for all the shootings, then the stupid shit with the immigration and how they're basically giving them rules to rule over the people of Chicagoans that are there, then I always think of how bad California's a shit show. California's a shit show from when I lived there to the point where this is the way they are now. I'm happy I never really stayed there. That was probably the best fluke decision that ever happened to me. And of all the cities that I've been in, and surprisingly enough, as much as people say, like an Uncle Tom, who say that New York is shit, I'm happy to have been in New York than to ever have been in Chicago or fucking LA or even California.
But why is New York? Why was it so good? What was the difference between New York and the rest of those big cities around the country? It was a mayor that was tough on crime.
Yeah. Yeah, you could say that.
He is the reason New
you could say
York
that.
City actually improved. He is the
I
reason
can't
that
deny that.
Times Square isn't filled with porn shops anymore.
Honestly, to be honest with you, Mayo, I only heard about Times Square being a porn shop. By the time I was old enough as a teen to get down to Times Square, when I started hearing about it, those places were virtually gone.
Yeah.
There were still some, but they were virtually gone.
Yeah.
And it's like, really? That was a place? And that was a place too? Like, it's not that anymore.
You grew up in New York City's heyday.
Yeah.
Because of the mayor and his tough on crime policies. Once you got de Blasio in there, and it turned into little socialist heaven, it's been a downhill slide ever since.
So because again, I can say, looking at de Blasio's reign, I don't really see that there was really much that New York gained out of it. But then looking at Adam, I'm like, dude, you got to do something. You have to do something, because
he ran on a tough on crime initiative, and he hasn't come through. He talks about all these laws he has to follow, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't advocate for changing them, which is the only way to get out of this mess. More money and federal money will not fix New York City's problem when it comes to these people. It's just going to attract more.
I'll be honest with you. I wish, because I'm at a point where I look at New York, and like I said, I'm a person that I look at the homeless system here, because I'm always thinking about me and my chick was just having a conversation, not yesterday, probably the day before that, and we were talking about if we had to move, but we had to stay here in New York, if we should even consider moving, I would never move to Staten Island because it's just ridiculous, but maybe like Long Island or whatever. And the first thing I just thought about is commuting, which is a little different for me now, because I'm mainly a work at home kind of guy. I have no problem traveling, but even when I think about the expenditures of traveling, it would still cost me less than me spending time in the apartment that I have right now versus me investing in a home that I could have in out
Oh,
in the suburbs.
you'd be crazy to buy a home anywhere around New York City right now.
Right.
'Cause
Well,
it's a dying city.
we look at family as well, because there's this family of who are trying to give up their homes that they already have or whatever because they're at that old age or whatever. But so it's all about what we would inherit or take over, not necessarily buy for new. So we do have conversations about that because in terms of buying a home, I'm not really much into it. I've always been a condo guy, not necessarily a homeowner. But I do understand that there are people who want to leave things behind, then I would take it. Obviously, beggars can't be choosers. But in terms of being here, I can't think of really pulling people out who don't understand what it's like to be anywhere else. Like I've gotten a little taste of being outside of New York for a while. So I understand what some of the life is like being out in the suburbs, but I can also say that it was really difficult for me as a city boy. And I think it would be very difficult for someone who's never really been outside the city. So it would be a new thing for
Well,
them.
people that live in New York seem to think the rest of the country is just like New York
You're
City.
absolutely right.
And
it
it's
was
not.
I was just like that. I was just like that until I worked for a dance company where I did for 2 years. I was just in that same mindset. When I really got to travel, when I got to see hayfields, when I got to all that shit, I was like, wow, the world is so much different than what I thought it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because one thing you mentioned, right? About people worrying about what's around where they live, like their
Mhm.
nightlife. If you're living paycheck to paycheck and one of your top 10 concerns is nightlife, you're doing it wrong, sir.
But I have so many people they won't leave the city because they're worried about a nightlife.
And they're stupid.
Well, I mean,
I hate to say it.
it's all they know. They want to know that if they're able, they want to know that even if they're getting older and they're doing things, that they can be out to 3 o'clock in the morning and come home because they were hanging out with friends rather than turning in early because there was nothing to do in the fucking suburbs. And I kind of get it, but at the same time, I'm like,
you can hang out and have a fire in your backyard till 3 in the morning.
most people who I know who are city people don't understand that life because most of us don't have backyards. That's the difference.
It's just
We never had houses for backyards.
I remember in the 70s when the oil embargo hit and all that.
Okay.
And a lot of my friends' fathers lost their jobs. They traveled to work in other cities, sent the money home, stayed in a little shithole hotel or a trailer somewhere until they built up enough money to move their family to the new place. That's how people survived the Great Depression.
That sounds right. I just don't know many people who really understand that life, that kind of lifestyle, that
People are
sacrifice
too
today.
afraid to do it now.
Well, I think some people are afraid, but I think some people just don't know better. They don't even see that as an option in today's times.
I mean, they've never read The Grapes of Wrath?
No. No, of course
That was a
not.
requirement in every school I ever went to.
No, sir, it was not. No, sir, it was not. It may have used to have been, not anymore. The education system is just so poor and it's diminished so much over time. There's no way as hell that they still think about they even read even close to the books or even literature that they have out today as to what people should be figuring out to be expanding their mind. Not even freaking close. Not even close. Most people don't have any idea of what most basic things. I still know many people today who have never read anything from Shakespeare but know who he is. I shit you not on that. Never read one thing from Shakespeare, just know who he is. And that's the truth. That's the world that we live in today.
But you're either going to live or you're going to survive.
That's true. But the idea that we get from a lot of people, and I'm trying to get something together with a young lady I'm speaking with, but what is the idea of living now? It's just like we talk about the American dream. The American dream at some point was owning a white picket fence and a freaking house. And now the American dream, not even say now, but there was a point where the American dream for younger people was traveling and seeing the globe. And who knows what the American dream is now.
Yeah, and guess what? They started adulthood too late.
Well, okay, so I love the fact that you said that, because you said they started adulthood too late. But even when people look for when we examine the Roman times, right? People would say that they started adulthood too late. There are people who are definitely sure in their freaking late 20s, still up in their families, being looked at as a boy.
Oh yeah, if their families had the money to support them.
Yeah, that's true. That is also true.
You know,
I cannot deny that.
So, they suffered from affluenza. But affluenza is now a poor person's disease.
Yeah, that's a fact.
Because they think they're owed this.
Agreed.
I'm sorry if you chased your rap career until you were 28.
28. All right.
Or
try being
if
into
your
your late
dreams,
30s.
yeah. Or if your dreams of becoming the next Tony Hawk just didn't work out.
Tony Hawk.
But guess what? Like you said, everybody starts the race at a different time.
Different pace, yeah. Yeah.
If you're gonna start off late, you're gonna end up not as far.
I agree. I think
for the
most
most
people,
part. I mean,
but most people don't even see their lives that way, and I think it's because we don't have enough people to explain it to them. Like as much as we get our philosophers or readers or whatever instructors that we have in college, if you manage to go to college, we don't have enough people that really even to explain that to them. Like you start life wherever you're starting life at, and this is why I also have the type of conversation with people that believe that, well, if you haven't made it by this year, you're fucked. And I'm just like, really? Because I speak to people who are like almost at retirement age and they're still scratching their head. Like, I don't know what I want to do with myself. Or I woke up when I saw my grandchild talking about how she wanted to do something for herself. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, like, oh my God, I had not only my daughter, but now I'm looking at my granddaughter and she figured out what she wanted to do herself. And I never figured out what I want to do with myself as now this 50, almost 60-year-old woman. And I'm just like,
probably too late.
Well, again,
I hate to say it, it's probably too late.
Well, we say that, right? But what is too late to when it's all about what you really focus on? Because there are plenty of people, and I made this conversation when I was on Cellulite's panel, believe it or not. And the guys on the panel were saying something like, if you as a man hasn't figured yourself out by 35, pretty much you're fucked. And I'm like, Colonel Sanders didn't become a fucking millionaire and figure out what the fuck he wanted to do until he was like 65.
But look what Colonel Sanders did from the time he was a teen.
So much.
But he learned. These guys are not Colonel Sanders started in his teens. He didn't get successful until he was 35. These guys literally are not 35, starting 65. Until they're. But these 60s, guys, sir. Yeah. But these guys aren't starting until then.
Right.
And that's the difference.
So my answer to them was, it's not about really how early you start, but really when you wake up. Some people just, because we have so many, our time is just so different from those times back then. Like, I'm sorry, but we cannot compare the time that we're in now compared to the time of Colonel Sanders. He didn't have the internet to distract him. He didn't have a whole bunch of big employers, paying him to forget what his dreams would be. Not that he really had any dreams in the first place. He was literally the example of fumbling through life.
Yeah.
But there are people who know what they like to do or what they think they're really good at, and they never develop it.
See, that's one of the biggest problems, right? Everybody's talking about dreams. Don't follow your dreams. follow your skills.
Skills. I agree.
They will take you to your dreams later in life.
I agree, but there are so many people as well. I mainly agree with you on that. Like I want to say that I'm about 80% with you agreeing on that, or agreeing with that. However, there's so many people that they get into a particular job where they're taught skills, right? And because your skills are not necessarily in line with what your talents are. And most people don't figure out what their talents really are. They are focusing on their skills, and most of the time their skills are really based on the trainings that were given to you by people who wanted you to perform a specific task, and you got really good at that.
I'm not talking about technical skills, though.
But what I'm telling you that most people focus on technical skills. They haven't really figured out what was something that was innate that they can figure out, because most of their job has been trying to figure out fulfilling someone else's dream than fulfilling somebody else's goals rather than their own.
That's on them.
I agree, but a lot of people are lost like that.
Yeah.
A lot of people are. And that's what I've come to notice by speaking with so many people on a big wavelength of ages. And it's just like when I think about that, I just go, it's sad, but it woke me up as to say, what the fuck am I doing with myself? And what am I doing am I just following that same roadmap, or am I doing something that's really in line with my talents? Now I got lucky. I got lucky to say that my natural, I mean, everybody who's a human being at least has some form of intellect is curious. But I can say that my natural gift is literally observation. I learn really through just watching someone. I'm very curious about human beings. Why did you do that? Why did you climb that way?
And you're a people person too.
I wasn't. I had to force myself to be that way. The more curious I got about people, the more I was able to become a people person. But really, from the beginning, I don't like people. It was that me being a people person was a skill I had to develop naturally. I was observant, but I was distant. I had to learn to be.
You were also curious because you become curious on, well, why are you doing it this way?
Right.
And that's how you learn somebody's psyche.
That's correct. So that was something I had to build on, because normally I would just watch and stay at a distance. And for me to get in their face to ask things, I had to learn to do that. So yeah.
Well, that's the only way to actually do what you do.
Right. So there are a lot of people who haven't really figured that part out.
But see, like dealing with these prisoners in New York, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're looking at a holistic approach of knowing all the person's background and ignoring their behavior and blaming their behavior on their background instead of just judging them on their behavior.
I agree. So, contrary, it's not the fact that people are living their lives in a pessimistic mindset. There are literally a lot of people that haven't figured out what they really want to do with themselves. So literally, they're waiting for someone else to guide them, to literally guide them to the promised land. They're hoping that one day somebody's going to tell them to do something that they will just realize that this is what they were supposed to be doing all along. They're waiting for someone else to tell them what their purpose is. And that's the thing that I want people to wake up from. That you need to discover on your own what your purpose is. Someone else can't give you what your purpose is. So,
I mean, the day I left home, my dad told me from here on out, it's on you.
That makes sense. But then you have to do a lot of work to figure out what you're going to do.
Yeah, but there's also a lot of places you can go to figure that out and still earn money.
That's true.
You got Job Corps, you got Peace Corps, you got the military.
I think most people are into following the things that only make them comfortable and not looking for discomfort. And I always say that the area that you're going to grow in is a place that's always discomfort.
Most people only want to do the really cool stuff.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. I said you have to be willing to do the things that you're not gonna like. That's where you're gonna really find your growth.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. I said if it's something that I'm gonna hate, might as well get it done now. Like I might as well just do it now. I'd rather do all the shit that I like later.
Yeah. If you can do something you hate well, you can do something you love outstanding.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I say that to so many people and they don't get it. They don't. I'm like, life is short. Eat the fucking dessert now. Eat the dessert now. Get to the meal. Get to the meal and just start focusing on the meal later. All that dessert is just it's the small shit. That's why desserts are always small. Knock it out the way because you love it, sure, but you need to get to the main meal because that's the shit that's gonna prepare you for it. Get to it. If it means that you have to amp yourself up to it, 'cause it's the same way I said about working out. Nobody really tells themselves, "Oh, I gotta work out. I love working out." No, most people have to work. They have to start working out despite that they don't like it, and they get into it. They get into it as they're doing the motions, and I'm like, you need to do that, despite the fact that
And
you don't like it.
it's
Get
all
into it.
habit based. It's all habit based.
Correct. And I'm like, if you do that, you're on your way to it. All right. So, there were questions that pretty much I want to ask, and I'm happy that you came up here because we were talking about in terms of like how we're gonna move, how we're moving about, or say these people that get stuck in a particular situation here in New York, and how they're gonna move out, and not just I'm just talking about New York, but really for anyone who's really stuck in like city limits and how do they move about. But I'm like, if you cannot move and therefore what you're trying to do for yourself is not considered rational, like what other opportunities do you have in the job market? Because you're really at the mercy of trying to find somewhere to get outside the city. But then when you
Well,
were saying, go ahead, go ahead.
you're gonna have to leave your comfort zone, right?
That's true. But
And you
you don't want
might
to be
have to leave
homeless
your family for a
moving
bit.
with your family and everything to do that.
No, but you can leave your family where they're housed
Okay.
and go out and work.
Okay.
There's traveling construction crews where the company literally pays your food and housing costs while you're on the road. They pay your per diem in your hotel.
How abundant is that though?
They're everywhere.
See, I didn't know
Especially
that.
in like industrial plant maintenance jobs.
Okay.
The roving drywall crews that put up retail establishments.
Retail? I don't know. Retail. I see more retail being abandoned than being constructed.
Yeah, right now.
Right.
But there's still maintenance crews that travel around. I mean, it right now. You can come out to Wichita, Kansas.
Okay.
You're going to start off about $25, $26 an hour.
That's okay. That's fine.
You're going to be on second shift for a couple of years.
That's
You're going to get all the overtime you ever wanted.
I mean, it's light in taxes, but okay.
and guess what? If you're a minority, you're going to get hired because it's federal contracts. And it's in Wichita, Kansas, where there's a shortage of minorities.
Interesting. That's something to consider. Again, I didn't know about that.
We build airplanes here, sir. Cessna, Raytheon, the old Boeing, and Bombardier, all right here in town. And Airbus has a wing shop here.
Interesting.
And they will teach you the job.
I don't think a lot of people understand, or one I didn't know, but I don't think a lot of people understand what a lot of the opportunities that are out there because we're only stuck about what we know based on the area that we've been in.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know about any of that stuff living in a city.
A lot of guys just don't want to work anymore. They don't want to do physical work. But guess what? That's where the money is.
I agree with that.
You know, and while you're working at Boeing, they'll pay your school.
Well, I will say one good, I'll give one good news of everything that I basically picked out from New York. It's the one good news that I've had. Basically, that it's from from 2010 to basically going from 2022, the amount of homelessness for vets have dropped. We were at a higher percentage, and now we literally dropped to 1%. So we've literally at the start of 2010, we had about 5,900 vets who were basically homeless, and now as of the latest inquiry of 2022, we're down to like 990. So we're not. We literally dropped to like 1%.
But what's
But
the reason for that?
well, there was also a big push for veterans to actually have places, because that now literally veterans have been pushed to the front of the line when it comes to like vouchers and everything for like housing lotteries and everything. There was really an attempt to push for veterans. I'm pretty sure there were other reasons. I don't know all the reasons, but I do know that they were definitely put to the front for a lot of things.
Well,
Unless
now
you
the
wanna
immigrants are
comment
getting
on
pushed
it.
to the front, though.
Yeah.
I mean, Massachusetts closed the only soldiers' home in the state, and they were going to wreck it. But now they're going to house immigrants in it, leaving their veterans on the street. The same ones that used to live there are now on the street.
And that's how I feel about the homeless that we have now.
Well,
They're
the
on the
veterans in
street.
America need to realize that the country doesn't give a shit about them.
I agree, but it's
And
the
they
same
need
thing
to
that we're
face
having
that
about
fact.
normal Americans as well. Because they're literally trying to get people on buses to take them outside the counties, drop them off anywhere where they can figure this shit out, rather than do that to the fucking people who are not of this country who just showed up.
Well,
Okay.
what would New York's homeless problem look like today if AOC wouldn't have helped block Google?
I couldn't honestly tell you right now, but we have to
You
figure
know,
this out.
The rent control is an issue in New York City.
That's the major issue that we deal with right now.
And zoning, rent control, and permitting and codes.
I think if we can just tackle one at a time, starting with rent, it'll get a lot better for New York City here.
But grandma's gonna lose her 4-bedroom apartment she's been in since the 50s.
I get it.
It's full of nothing but cat litter.
I get it, but if it means that we start doing better for the whole, and she has to take that little bit of discomfort, it is what it is right now.
No,
because
grandma,
I want to save the body.
Grandma
I wanna
shouldn't be
save the
paying
body.
more than $300 in rent.
I agree. I want to save the entire body because it's the cancer right now. But Mayo, thank you for coming up. I did appreciate a lot of stuff that you were saying in the chat, as well as you have enlightened me to a lot of things that's coming up here as well.
I'm kind of an asshole about a lot of this, because I've taken control of my life.
And I think a lot of us should.
I've moved to places I didn't want to live for opportunities that could get me to other places.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of us should do a lot more in terms of taking care of their life. I know I plan on making a video later up, because I talk a lot about pretty much starting your life over, because I've done that in the last almost 2 years now that I think about it. But I think a lot of people are afraid to make the tough decision and wanting to take over and take control, because a lot of it's just really fear-based, or they've been so under the thumb of an employer for so long that they're just worried about what's the next step to make. And I know I'm planning on making some content to try to give them at least some steps that I did and some things that they should consider preparing for before they decide to try to make that leap. But outside of that, Mayo, thank you very much for showing up. I'm gonna just drop you out in the back real quick to make my little announcement to everybody.
No, not a problem, man.
So for everybody, thank you for watching this episode. There's a lot that's going on. I really just wanted to give my take on what was going on in terms of New York. Also, I'm gonna just say this, but remember that if you manage to notice what's going on in the city limits, I will just say it the same way how I said it a little bit earlier, is that if you are not someone who's willing to think about the advocacy of things that are taking place for the city limits, and you're not really interested in the things that's going on, just remember, us mofos is going to wind up going to your towns, because it's just so difficult here as it is right now. And whether that's New York, whether that's Chicago, whether it's freaking Los Angeles or even anywhere in California right now. If we can't figure out what the hell we're gonna do there, we're gonna move to your neighborhood and we're gonna be taking over your shit. And you don't really want that, right? Which means that as much as you don't want to think about it, you should think about what you're gonna do for the people that are already there in your state. So if you're a person who likes to volunteer for like the homeless or you like to donate to particular shelters, do so because quite frankly, I think everybody across the nation could use a little bit of help. If you did find this episode really good, just do me a favor, guys, and of course, hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. And if you're just not convinced yet from subscribing, do me a favor. Watch some other videos, watch some other shorts, and of course, I have live streams. As it currently goes right now, I definitely have something that I'm going to be doing on Wednesdays, whether it's a live stream or actual video. And of course, when I go live on Saturday. And the main takeaway that I want you guys to walk away with this today is people are trapped pretty much all over and we're all dealing with all kinds of situations, right? As Americans, it's hard for us to perform drastic measures that's basically just going to keep us afloat on the rooftops. Everybody is trying to make their way right now, and it's just really difficult for everyone across the board. I know that you're dealing with your thing, just like everybody's dealing with their thing, but I just don't want us to be at a point where we're just basically saying, F them, don't worry, I'm just gonna worry about me. And then because we weren't paying attention, later shit is on your doorstep because you weren't paying attention to it. I want to thank everybody for having the conversation that we had. Thank you for Mayo showing up. Thank you for everybody who's here in the chat. Thank you for showing up. I think we're going to be really having this really good community that's going to be building. We'll be working on a whole bunch of different stuff. I encourage you to take action in terms of if you know somebody who could really be using this information and volunteering this message, be sure to share this content out to them. And leave a comment after the show, of course, because I want to know exactly what your thoughts are. I do have some other things coming up. I'm just working in the background to make sure. I hope to see you on the next episode. This is your guy Reggie, also known as Resla, and I will see you on the next episode. You stay opinionated. See you next time.